Welcome everyone to the podcast. I am Albert, and today we begin our ongoing, no end in sight journey across Nosgoth. Revisiting it, for many of you I'm sure, but for some of you perhaps for the first time. I have resonated with and loved and appreciated Legacy of Kain for over 21 years now. I would like to say maybe 13 or probably 12, very young, 1999, when the game came out, and I was in Italy at the time. And so my first experience, I believe, was with a subtitled copy. I don't think they did a dubbed version. Can't remember that exactly. But I do remember we lived in Montefiore del Lazo, a medieval village in Italy. Not kidding, you can look it up. Spent only about 2-ish years there, all up, but it was enough to be a very formative and special experience for me, and indelibly connected with my journeys across Nosgoth. My mum is British, my dad's German, and mum has a sensibility to her of the theatre, and so the Shakespearean aspect of Legacy of Kain resonated with the family from that point of view. I think that may have been why it wasn't outright banned, is because I would express, look, this isn't just slashy, violent bullshit. There's a depth here. I mean, I was too young to say the words, there's a commentary here, but I'm sure at some point I expressed that there was more to it than just the vampires and the blood and stuff. As a young kid, I was, between two languages, and so Legacy of Kain was a beautiful anchor to my English roots. I'm Australian, and by extension, Britain is where Australia came from, so that's kind of my realm. I'm a white dude, and I acknowledge that, like, for example, with Shakespeare and Milton, for example, that whole realm of literature, and Blake as well, which I've outlined the upcoming episodes, but I do want to talk about Blake as well in this, but it will definitely be covering Milton and Shakespeare and Eastern mysticism, as Amy Hennig wonderfully outlined in a recently I read an interview from back in 2000 when she was talking about the game coming to Dreamcast, and just to hear her talk about the Legacy of Kain with so much, with the whole horizon ahead of it, was very exciting, kind of vicariously. Obviously, we know how things have turned out, and it's in a dormant state now, but it won't be for long if we at the Legacy of Kain podcast have anything to say about it. And I think that's a perfect launching off point to introduce. They're not here with me today, but I want it so that their reputations precede them on episode 2. Number 1, we have my brother from Canada, fellow Commonwealth brother, Kyle Card, Japanese residing Canadian actor. So he speaks Japanese, but he is Canadian and he's from Canada. He lives in Japan, and he is in the realm of games, and if you have played Death Stranding, he plays the driver of the Bridges vehicle in the third trailer, which released in 2018 for Death Stranding, and in the endgame itself, rather. He is erudite, he is kind, he is open-minded, he is generous, he's extremely eclectic, and has very kindred interests to mine, so he's very much in that way of like a brother from another mother type thing. And as soon as we met in Tokyo in the karaoke bar to discuss, to non-discuss, because he was still bound by NDA at the time, but there was an immediate sensibility of the theatrical and I don't even think we dove into Legacy of Kain at the time, but it all makes sense in hindsight, because he has that. You'll see when you speak with him, and I've spoken with him twice on various other episodes, or 2 other episodes rather, and he's got a terrific sensibility for podcasting. Not only that, I want to be helping him with. I think he's already kickstarted it. Actually, I think he's very proactive and prolific with what he creates, and as well as the Benza, a Japanese series he stars in. He's got theatre productions and stuff. So again, the theatre, we're going to be revisiting that theme there. So my theatre friend, my kindred dude who actually is in the realm of games as in motion capture, and who I am manifesting for to be involved heavily in the what we're all manifesting to be the Legacy of Kain revisitation, rebirth, reboot, continuation, whatever, which is, you have to all participate in that with me, because this is a special year, the 25th anniversary of Blood Omen in November, the 20th anniversary of Soul Reaver 2 in October. So big, special, important dates that we are going to make our way towards with what we're aiming for is an episode a month. So by the time we get to, we should be in our 7th or 8th episode, closer to the end of the year, and planning on having a very special guest for episode 10. So that will be revealed later. Our second accompanying clans member is Richie from Strictly Fantasy. I've only just reached out to him though, so there's a chance he might not be able to come. However, we certainly hope he can, because he is and he might try and brush this aside, but he is the go-to YouTube scholar and informant and lore professor, for Legacy of Kain, and this is the highest praise. I think, in the same way that Zeltic does what he does for Zelda, and VatiVidya does what he does for the Soulsborne and Miyazaki Sphere, Richie does for Legacy of Kain with his excellently well-produced videos. So, if you are familiar with the channel Residents of Evil, think of Legacy of Kain podcast as something similar. Obviously, we are at a much smaller scale at this stage, but the goal is to make our way towards that kind of scale and that kind of activity and community involvement, including streams and streaming the games and etc. So, and hopefully that can lead to involvement with the creators, which I have in other podcasting ventures had the wonderful opportunity to speak to Tommy Earl Jenkins, who plays a character in Death Stranding, Die Hard Man, and also to Darren Jacobs, who plays Heartman in Death Stranding as well. So Simon Templeman and Michael Bell are out there being awesome, even more awesome with every passing year, and the goal is to reach out to them for a Zoom call and to have them on the show at some point. So won't that be fun? And then innumerable programmers, level designers, concept artists, all the unsung, as far as I'm concerned, the end credits of Blood Omen and Legacy of Kain, any of these titles, those end credits are our podcasts. Like, each one of those names could be a podcast title for what we intend to do, what I intend to do. Obviously, factors of availability, that will affect how many people have behind these games that we can speak to. Factors of willingness, if they want to in the first place. So sifting through all that, if we're looking at maybe 200 or so people per game, I'd say a good 20-30 of them from each game would want to be involved in having a conversation on the show, and to have a setup that will be a pleasant experience for everyone, for the archive itself, and for you guys as a byproduct. Good cameras, good mics, that kind of thing. It's just started raining here in Canberra, which is perfect because the cozy rainy vibes of Nosgoth are the real deal. And I like to dip into Mind's Eye Cinema. If you're not familiar, I just straight up start recounting things as though they've already happened or are happening in front of me. So I see for a Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver remake by Bluepoint, who have now proven themselves with Shadow of the Colossus and Demon Souls, I see a menu where you are able to select the load game, save game, etc. It is the same statues from Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver, obviously in 4K, 8K, HD, amazing, and it's a dynamic menu screen where it can rain on that statue, and it can, that active select screen. Obviously, they did a wonderful job on the remake of Medieval, which is also very kindred and tied into my experiences growing up in this medieval village for a couple of years. I also, even though the settings are certainly kindred with each other with the medieval aspect, but in Italy, I actually played most of my Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver after school at Gisaconi, which is a high school in San Benedetto, which is where my sister was born, Valentina, who is our third host. A great way to segue into my third co-host for this ongoing series. And she's rad. She is a cosplayer. Her and I have a shorthand based on the Legacy of Kain titles, like where we'll spout lines from the games to each other. Her name's Valentina, and Via Victus, I think she went by that, potentially as a moniker, if I can remember. But she would just kind of express that, yell that, because and her middle name is Victoria, so Valentina Victoria Via Victus, VV, and at the same time as Legacy of Kain, for us, we were experiencing the majesticness that we will discuss on a separate podcast of Interview with the Vampire. And for a time, I can remember looking at forums where I was speculating on who might play a good Raziel, and I saw the nose, and I saw the just the general features of Tom Cruise as Lestat, and you better believe I was manifesting for that back then on those very primitive forums. And Brad Pitt as Dumar, etc. We are in an era though, folks, where you might chuckle on that at that now, but maybe not. Very, very soon, we won't be. Yeah, that won't be so fanciful. It won't be so chuckle-worthy, because we do have currently in production set for release in I would say maybe just over a year. The Last of Us on HBO, which I do a podcast called The Last of Us Podcast, and my co-hosts there, Catherine and Marie, and I are going to be covering that series. And these are the door openers, folks, for not only the Order 1886 series, which I also do, the Order podcast, but a Legacy of Kain animated series. We have Castlevania, folks, on Netflix, which is a perfect template. These are the pieces moving into place, setting the stage for those lights to go back on this grand, endlessly revisitable Shakespearean vampire saga, which I would love to see Amy return to, Amy Hennig, who is our goal for episode 20 as a Zoom guest. What a day that would be. We're going to manifest it together, I'm sure. This will get posted to the excellent and growing subreddit, a true testament to the timelessness of these stories, of their intellect, of their world building, of their fascinating nomenclature. And I have expressed in other podcasts about one of the beautiful aspects of the interactive art form is that it can, engender and prompt new, just far deeper layers of, far deeper realms of empathy, that we connect with the characters, because we are ourselves the story. We are the story. We are in the clothes, in the shoes. The vampires don't wear shoes, but we are in the roles of these characters, these flawed characters, these tragic characters, complex grey characters. And alongside Metal Gear, where there was greyness to the plot, it wasn't straightforward, Legacy of Kain also had this formative aspect, this groundbreaking, pioneering aspect of a deeper quality to the characters than just the rule of cool. Obviously there's insanely fucking cool stuff, but it's never the point. The coolness is as a byproduct of the world building. I can see so clearly a remake being done beautifully with modern engines, Look at Demon Souls. We also, another major couple of pieces that have fallen into place is how much the world has fallen in love with the Dark Souls series, with Miyazaki. And Timur Hussein from GameSpot and Kind of Funny recently spoke with Tim Geddes of Kind of Funny, and very, very astutely mentioned that Square Enix need to do something with it, and that he has disowned them until then. But he expressed that, From Software, to have them create it would just be TV punchingly beautiful. I would lose all composure and I would have to destroy something in my immediate vicinity out of celebration. If they chose to do what, I think Star Wars recently, they sort of opened the stable up instead of just EA. Now, so many people are involved. Bethesda are doing an Indiana Jones title. Ubisoft are making an open world Star Wars title. So we do live in a world where such announcements aren't unheard of. And I could see Square Enix saying, look, just like how Bandai, they share platforms, there's all this sort of behind the scenes publishing, authorizing, behind the scenes stuff. I won't pretend to know it too extensively. All that I know is that there's a creative studio and a publishing studio. Sometimes they're one and the same. And I think for the best team to come forward, Bluepoint are wonderful. They've proven themselves so wonderfully. I would love for Bluepoint's first creative title to be a sequel, to be the 6th closing chapter. The same way that the Star Wars sequels closed the Skywalker saga. That would be wonderful for that, to see that closed. We have Michael, we have Simon. They're ready. I'm sure they're ready to wrap something, to maybe re-record dialogue if needed. We have amazing Tony Jaa impressionists out there. One of them is featured on my Instagram. I'll kind of try and deftly see if I can name drop them while we kind of go along in this. But I will tell you a little bit about Valentina, because I dove into the other co-hosts. So we've played through it multiple times. I have very clear memories, not just of Summit Editor, but Soul River 2 is also huge for me. In that way where, I don't know if you've played stuff with siblings, or it's like you've just played a game, it's like you swap the controller, and Janos Audrin's amazing cathedral, or rather his edifice, like where he lives and stuff. Like, the Soul Reaver games have something, I would say, inimitable to them, of this unveiling of the next step, the next area, how it builds the narrative. It's absolutely enrapturing. So there you go. So folks, we are almost at the 20-minute mark for this one. I did want it to be a shorter episode. So that one, who his name is Jacob M. Keen, so I posted on 9th of December 2019. He's wonderful, and he does a spot on Tony J, so we have recourses for that as well. So and folks, I'm going to leave you with that. It really is a special time to begin this journey. I've shared with my co-hosts the layout, the unrolling, the rollout of the episodes, the rough schedule. I have a similar thing going with Dune. Things can shift, things can change, but roughly monthly is when it's going to hit, and I'll sort of notify the social media outlet. The primary one for us is the Instagram, so I'll be posting this there as well, to give a heads up that this episode has gone out. And we'll manifest this, folks. Just do not lose hope. Everything occurs again. It's all this recurring loop, remember that. And we have wonderful things ahead for us with this, because again, as I mentioned recently on the actual previous episode to this one, I said a similar thing for the Order 1886, is when the story itself is as compelling and interesting and as arresting and timelessly revisitable as Legacy of Kain, that is its own self-sustaining fire and self-sustaining guarantee that it will come back in some form. As we saw Crash Bandicoot get remade, we saw Oddworld get remade and stuff. So it's going to happen. All right, so operate on that, manifest with us, join us on this adventure. Hitch up your Ustenheimian pony, you know, and pull up your cloak over your head as we head out into the realms together. Be well, everyone, and until next time, I've been Albert, and have a great day. Bye for now.